Hi, this is Rick Wilson. I'm CEO of Miva and author of Dragonproof e-commerce, as well as host of this podcast. And I welcome you to our episode this week, where I interview Phil Leahy from Retail Global in Australia. So, we just did virtual Mivacon last week, the first and only ever virtual Mivacon we've ever done. I have to thank Phil Leahy, who's on with me today, for producing it. And his team kind of saved the day, if you will. And so I don't know how often Phil speaks in front of crowds versus behind the scenes, but he is certainly, in my mind, a master of production quality. So I'd like to introduce Phil Leahy and let you introduce yourself. But at the end of the day, this was not a recreation of a banquet hall conference. It was more like an 8-hour television show. And it was very much not the same thing. So Phil, what was your takeaway?
Yeah, absolutely.
And hi to everyone.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Phil Leahy, the founder of Retail Global. And thank you, Rick, for those kind words. I really appreciate that. I think, the team's really stepped up. And I guess when we started doing digital events early in COVID, that I did start to recognize, and I kept saying to the team, we're going to become, a BBC, like a news channel where we have those values. So we've been delivering. We've done, I believe, that yours was the fourth 9-hour all-day digital day. Okay. And as we've gone, we partnered with eBay to deliver eBay Digital Day. We partnered with Amazon to do the same, and then of course with you guys. And each time it's basically lots of learning.
Good company or bad company, but I'll take it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then like I discussed with you before, we learn a lot from your show, and we delivered a show yesterday for the Catch Marketplace down under, and our values and our production values actually stepped up a lot.
Yeah, so for those who are listening for the first time, Phil is in Melbourne, Australia. So that's the Down Under reference, which has a near and dear place in my heart. But the topic is bigger. I mean, it's all bigger than I think any of us realize yet.
Yeah. Look, it's been really interesting, especially at the moment in Melbourne. We have a curfew at 8 o'clock at night until 5 a.m. in the morning. We're not allowed out of the house after that. We're under severe lockdown restrictions, even though with a population of 6 million people, today we had 113 cases. So it's on the way down. We've been very successful in our country, but at the same time, it's very challenging for everybody, for staff and everyone, that they're stuck in their houses. But we've been, we get online together as a group every morning, and work out how we're going to work together, and also keep the vibe alive. I sent all the staff a air frying cooking machine so we could all talk about recipes and things like that. So just keeping that vibe going and that team building has been interesting.
I don't know if Ashley from your team told you, but one day I clicked the wrong Zoom link to try to log into my morning managers meeting here in the US. And one from the night before, and they were all having a drink. Yeah. It was like late night in Melbourne. And so then Ashley was like, "Rick, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. What are you guys doing in my managers meeting?" But I think that sort of brings up my next topic, which is suddenly in 2020, performing on camera is part of new management, right? So like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's face it, some of the best speakers at corporate level have to be, leaders have to be able to get up in front of people and speak. But now we have to start thinking about visual. We've got to start thinking about how do we look online and that it's being recorded.
I mean, historically, how much do you speak in public versus behind the scenes?
I'm behind the scenes. I love my job. I get up on stage with a little 10-minute speech, which is really easy to deliver. But basically my job is to put great speakers, great communicators on stage. And my job is not really to take that front mic. One day when I've got an interesting story to tell, I'll do that, I guess.
I mean, as one of the people who've spoken for you, none of us have interesting stories to tell. But that's its own aside. Do you think these types of interactions require different skills? Like, how do we all rise to the occasion of 2020?
Well, I guess it's, it's like anything. It's a lot of practice and a lot of time. And I think as time goes on, we're going to get better at it.
Yep.
But just to be mindful, like think about in terms of production too, like we're on a podcast at the moment, so it's not a visual, but it's, experimenting with lighting, with backgrounds and
Yep.
experimenting with those sort of things. I think it's really important. The digital side of things is great because people, you're actually going to have rooms fuller than you would in a physical space. So that makes it really exciting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised with the turnout for Mivacon. Like both for the keynote and through the closing event, I was absolutely surprised with the number of people who were engaged and involved and asking questions. So I mean, with that said, what do you think are the keys to keeping people engaged in this new digital environment?
Well, production values are going to help, but it's like entertainment. People have got short, attention spans. It's got to be interesting. I guess a good example at Mivacon was John Lawson's presentation. John is adaptable. He's amazing, and the way he used his slides and the way he did his presentation, I think, is where it's going. It's production values. And the ability to communicate in a short amount of time, especially if you're using slides, you can't have too much information on there.
No, not at all. I mean, so specific to that, how have your clients' needs shifted this year specifically? Like, what are you coaching people to do?
Doing our best to get platforms and marketplaces, etc., to talk to their community and basically give them the information they need. I mean, people are starved. The lucky part about being in e-commerce is most of us are doing very well. Most of us are doing very well. But there's plenty of challenges in that as well. So people need to talk and share, and obviously we can't do that because of the restraints on physical get-togethers. So we want to see companies promote a solid program of touch points, whether it's once a month or once every 3 months with their base.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question for you. So like, how much of this is trying to recreate the physical experience, the physical interaction, and what's necessary now?
Yeah, I guess it is. It's trying to also create a bit of that physical. Like we used our exhibition rooms for your show, which was the first time. It was new technology. We spent 3 months working out what we're going to use. And I went around to each booth and dropped in and saw how things were going. And some companies were doing it really well.
Well, and what did you find when you were in the rooms though?
Well, I found that some companies did it really well. They had, 4 or 5 of their own people there. They started conversations with people and then I said, well, let's take that into a breakout room. So they'd take them away from the main stand into a room and then talk. It was interesting to see that, when you arrived in the room, we could actually play a video to them. One company did that, and it was a great experience. It was like a 15-second video before you got into the room. And then you came to a white board, which would basically, you could put a tile there, but it was basically your messaging. I went into one room and they had all these graphs up and all that. I'm like, sorry guys, what do you do? And they say, oh, we lend money to merchants. And I went, how about you just put up a slide? We lend money to merchants and ask me how.
Yeah.
So it's experience and looking at these things. And I think as we go along, we're going to learn more about that and pass that on.
So how long have you been doing this?
Now 15 years. It was off to the side. I was the number 1 eBay seller in Australia out of all categories at the time, and the top 5 UK Amazon seller. But I used to come to America and attend conferences, the PISA conference, and mingle with other top eBay sellers. And my business went, would just skyrocket by sharing this information. So I decided to start the conference down here to help other eBay sellers. There was no e-commerce conferences. And then over the years, it morphed into e-commerce quite naturally. And I started, I did our first show in Vegas about 5 years ago. So,
and what year did I come speak to you guys? Probably 3 years ago?
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And like, how do you see the difference between those events and these digital events? Like, what do you think's the same? What do you think's morphed?
Well, obviously, I think that people can get a lot out of meeting someone personally,
Yep.
sharing a drink. Some of those
Spoken like
functions.
true Australian.
Yeah, sharing a drink. And it doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be sharing a cupcake. But certainly in the same room, it's a great thing. But you sort of miss that opportunity with the digital side. But at the same time, you gain some more opportunities. You actually got a better chance to get the information. You can have that recorded. You can go back on that. You can listen to that. And you can also basically, you can sort of network a bit by seeing people in the asking questions and things like that. But it's not the same, but it's still valuable. It's still very valuable.
Well, and speaking of that, we actually just posted today all of the content from Mivacon, which is I think around 9 hours of digital content. So to producer Chris, who's listening secretly in the background, will you make sure that link goes up in the notes? So what role do you think social media streaming culture has played in shaping your business? How have those things trained the public?
With social media?
The whole idea of streaming. I mean, everything feels on demand these days, right?
Oh, it's completely changed our business. I mean, Rick, most of our competitors are basically billion-dollar companies, global billion-dollar companies. And I haven't seen the activity from them during this time. I've seen pretty much nothing. They're starting to get together now. We pivoted really quickly to do this. And now we're sustainable. We can survive as a business doing this without actually going back to physical. It's very natural that it's sort of happened now. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean that kind of points out the obvious, right? Which is there's a continuously blurring line between content and infotainment in business. And I think COVID really forced that hand. What's your take on that? And like what is a company's responsibility on that?
To be entertaining and provide great information. Absolutely. I mean, the only way, if you're a company and you're wanting to expand your base or you want to retain your base, you've got to take them with you. You've got to communicate in a fashion that they want to listen to. And part of that
right
is entertaining and being engaging.
And what do you think the secrets are to achieving that?
The secrets are having the right people around you and having the best people you can on representing your brand online, really, and preparation, being a little bit more prepared in terms of having questions up our sleeve if we needed them and those sort of things.
Sure.
And, really thinking about those questions as well, because they can actually start a whole nother conversation.
Well, typically, we see a version of this internally, even within corporate meetings. Like, so, everything I do now is this, right? I mean, this is my new life. I'm kind of locked in the compound. I'm happy to have a nice compound, but I'm locked in the compound and I'm always on Zoom. And I need to have things up my sleeve for when there's a lull.
Yeah. And what are you doing?
Well, we tend to do internally a lot of surveys. So we sometimes I feel like we survey the heck out of people, like in a way that feels overbearing. But I feel like I could be wrong. Like I feel like I could be underestimating the value of what it means to ask questions to our employees, right? Because our employees don't know what's in my head. Shoot, I don't know what's in my head half the time, but our employees know what's in my head. And and what I think is the truth, to the extent there's an objective truth here, is what I think is going on is that my employees, and I think this would be true for people who attend your events, is that they're looking for answers right now, right? We're all looking for some sort of certainty. And I think what you're describing is when there's a lull in the conversation, we can all have a moment of like, well, is that all there is? Is that the end of the story? But it's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the story, really. It's about where is this conversation going?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of those skills these companies today need to cultivate. I don't know that we also have to be telegenic filmmakers, but I think we have to be willing to get on screen I think if we think too much about getting on quote unquote TV, right, and we worry about our identity too much, I think we're going to miss our opportunities to describe who we are.
You've hit on a great point there. Absolutely. I mean, it's terrifying for a lot of people. It's terrifying for me. I look back at when we first started doing these digital events, 4 or 5 months ago, and I'd be very wooden and scared and nervous and reading off a script, and my eyes were on the bottom of the computer as I was talking. Horrible. And then getting out of your head, people want you to succeed. They don't want you to fail. They're behind you. They're not all there going, oh, look, he slipped up his word or he did. They want you to be successful. So if you've got going on in your head.
Yeah, well, and look, I've been on. John's interviewed me. I've been on. We're talking on John Lawson right now, who's our mutual friend. That's how I know Phil. But I've been on John's show. He's been on mine. He's been to Mivacon. And John sometimes shows up in a suit and tie, and he sometimes shows up in like a jokey T-shirt. John's willing to own whatever state he's in, and I think that's what makes him great.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. He's been my friend now for 15 years.
You met him through being a seller?
I actually gave John his first keynote. I was in Atlanta in about 2006 at the airport of the conference. It was an eBay conference, and I met John over a card game, and we actually had a little bit of a run-in over a poker.
Well, did you forget who the mark was?
Had a disagreement. And then the next day he was in the audience, and he started asking questions from the audience, and they were great questions. And they said, hey, John, come up on stage. And he spent the last 10, 15 minutes up on stage and just did it. And I'm like,
yeah. I
go, this guy's got it. I went up to him. I said, how would you like to fly to Australia and do a keynote? And he said, WTF, I think's the word for it.
Well, I mean, I think the core to all great content is being authentic. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm definitely bummed that COVID hit this year, because I was fully planning on coming to Australia for your conference, but I haven't really left my house in 5 months. So yeah, hopefully next year, but probably 2022. Do you think the shift that we're all going through is full of good possibilities? What's your take on this current shift? Like, is this something we're going to use to expand our skills?
I think it's an amazing opportunity, what's going on now and the shift. It's about putting fear aside and jumping at it and looking at the opportunity. There's so much opportunity at the moment. I mean, it's just incredible.
I mean, e-commerce is on fire, to say the least.
Absolutely. But there's a retooling of the economy. We're not going to work the same moving forward. We don't have to go into the offices in the city, and things are going to really change. I think things are going to get tough for a lot of people. It's going to be very tough. But, as entrepreneurs, it's our duty to actually find the solutions and then provide the jobs and build out. So this is a very exciting time for people, for entrepreneurs.
How do you envision the world of managing content in this future world order?
Well, that's probably more your pay grade, Mr. Wilson. Yeah, I've just conquered. When I say conquered, we're just getting HubSpot working properly after having it for 4 years and paying
that was actually
a ton of money.
The best investments we ever made was getting HubSpot working properly. So I get that.
Yeah. But no, it's going to be, video is going to be a very important play moving forward. Absolutely.
I think all companies are content creators now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
With that said, I'd like to thank Phil Leahy for coming on to join me today. It's 8 a.m. in Melbourne?
It's 10 a.m., but I've been up since 6 and been on the phone to the US because we've got a conference on the 23rd of September.
I'd like to thank Phil Leahy for getting up early and talking to me today on the podcast. I'd like to wish all of you a great week and to join you next week when we do in the next version. I'm going to be going on a roundabout or a road trip, whatever you want to call it. Chris, what are we calling my little journey? A walkabout? That's a good Australian term. I'm going to be taking a month and taking the RV and driving around the country. So I'll be doing my podcast from the road. But with that said, I will talk to all of you next week. Thanks, Phil, for coming.
Thank you, Rick.